So, a new trailer just released for Spider-Man Brand New Day. I've been deeply excited for this movie ever since the final moments of No Way Home and how that movie left the character. And from everything we've seen so far and how the director, Destin Daniel Cretton, has been talking about the wall crawler, I think that Brand New Day is looking to be everything that I've been wanting out of a Spider-Man movie. Now, both of the trailers for this movie leaked online a couple weeks before their release. But honestly, Sony, what did you expect? I don't think that Morbius rules is really the most secure password. And hey, if you need a new one, you could always take mine. So the trailer starts and we see Peter fighting Mac Gargan, the Scorpion, who's finally come back 9 years later after Spider-Man Homecoming. Just like the first trailer, we see that Peter's powers are going crazy. Some people are saying that might be the symbiote. I think it's going to lead to him becoming Man-Spider, which is way more fun. And he just beats the hell out of the guy. Like, oh my lord. One thing that's interesting is I originally, based on that first trailer, I had kind of like a feeling that Scorpion was going to be like the main villain, or at least like the final villain. I don't know why that one shot in that first trailer, like it had very like Act 3 energy, if that makes sense. But now that we see literally the end of the fight in this trailer, I think it's pretty safe to say that he's not going to be the main villain. So instead, I think that this encounter is going to be more closer to like the midpoint of the movie, and it would sort of show Peter going like too far and again beating the hell out of Scorpion. Because boy, he really wails on the guy. You know, just throwing a metal pipe into the mix. Why don't you? We see just like in the first trailer that Peter's life absolutely sucks. He is miserable, and I especially like this idea of, you know, Sea of Sex Ned Leeds. I like him doing these sort of like vlogs, video diaries type things, because it gives Peter like an avenue to sort of like stay in the loop with the characters and like kind of observe them from afar, but literally always being outside looking in and never being involved with their lives. It's very funny that MJ like dogs on him for like, who's watching these? But the dude's got like 2,000 likes. That's not bad. That's better than most of my TikToks. Peter's not following him though, which I think is interesting. Actually, is that intentional? That might be, maybe that's intentional. Maybe he's like, I don't even want him to know I exist. That could be fun. I'm reading very heavily into this. One thing that's very interesting is the way this movie looks. I remember the first trailer got a lot of criticism for like the visuals, mainly with like the VFX and the color grading, and a lot of that being because of the leak. They had to rush a lot of VFX and stuff. But honestly, I think this trailer is a huge improvement. It looks like a quote unquote real movie. There's actual color contrast, which that was kind of a big problem with the Home trilogy. Like everything was sort of washed out and muted and like kind of flat, which is not exclusive to those movies by any means. It was kind of a general Marvel problem for a while. Honestly, general blockbuster problem for a while. But for the most part, these shots look pretty great. This might be a bit of a reach. Like there's a lot of focus on the eyes. You know, there's all these close-ups of Peter's eyes going all dark and scary. And same with the first trailer, that close-up shot of the eyes within the mask. Seems like it's going to be a recurring visual thing in this movie. And that weirdly reminds me of Matt Reeves' The Batman. It might be because I'm too the Batman pilled right now because of all the stuff we're seeing. That movie focused a lot on Pattinson's eyes and like the eye performance. Is it intentional? I don't know. Probably not. But like, I don't know. I think it's neat. And I think a lot of the reason why this movie looks the way it does and like has such like a distinct intentional feel is hugely amount of the work of Destin Daniel Cretton, who's done some great things even within the confines of the MCU, like with Shang-Chi and Wonder Man. But also Tom Holland has had a huge influence on this movie's production. I would see a lot of stories about how because this movie's production has taken, you know, so long, and also because Tom Holland was shooting the Odyssey more or less around the same time, he would go from, you know, an MCU set to a Christopher Nolan set. He would kind of learn things there, see how quote unquote real movies were getting made, and then he'd come back and bring a lot of that information to the Brand New Day set. I remember hearing that he was doing a scene with Zendaya, and for whatever reason it just wasn't working for them. They couldn't figure it out, and so, you know, they had to talk with Destin, and Destin reportedly was like, yep, you're totally right, let's send everybody home, let's sit down, let's talk about this, let's really figure it out, but then we'll come back and actually shoot it when we feel like it's ready, which is very rare for kind of MCU production, but also a lot of general big blockbuster productions too. And I think it's very exciting that Tom has come so far as an actor. He can take his other experiences from other work and apply it to these big blockbuster IPs and feel comfortable saying that. And even that Destin created an environment where he felt comfortable doing that. I think that's very cool. It very much reminds me of how Sam Raimi would approach these characters, in the sense of like they're big, bombastic comic book characters, of course, but at the end of the day, they're still human, they're still people, and he really wanted to get to the heart of the people there. And speaking of Sam Raimi, we see that Peter's got organic webs now. We saw a little bit of that in the first trailer, and it's very clearly like his powers and his, I guess, mutation of his spider DNA is on the fritz. Who knows what's going on with that? Obviously, we can't say until the movie comes out, but I do really like this idea that Peter is burying himself so much into the idea of being Spider-Man that is manifesting himself as the spider part of him literally taking over. I think that's a very cool way to visualize that sort of like work-life balance of Spider-Man. Also, this goop is like weirdly satisfying. It looks like he's popping a big zit or something. We also get to see more of Bruce Banner, the Hulk. I really do like how they're approaching him here. A big part of like the MCU, the Marvel, Sony like deal to make these Spider-Man movies is that there is always some sort of like stipulation of like there has to be a major MCU character involved in the Spider-Man story in some fashion. For the Home trilogy, it was Doctor Strange and Nick Fury, and Iron Man was a huge part of that character. And that was mine and a lot of other people's biggest problem with that original trilogy. It felt like so much of Peter's motivations, and especially villains, were inherently defined by Iron Man as opposed to his own, know, his own sense of self. And so a lot of people are concerned that this is going to be like a similar situation where Hulk is going to kind of overshadow Spider-Man in his own movie. But I actually think that the way that they're going about him here looks way more interesting. He does not look to be like a mentor figure necessarily. Like obviously Peter's asking him questions, he's a professor and stuff like that, but I think he serves as this interesting foil to potentially Peter, his development into man spider, if that's what they're going with. And I really like that line he says where he's like, how would you decide what parts of nature are good or bad? And I think that's very cool. I think that's going to be a very interesting like theme to explore in this movie. Honestly, what if this is like the best Hulk movie we've gotten out of the MCU? That'd be crazy. Not unlikely. The thing that I've seen a lot kind of ever since No Way Home came out was this idea that Bruce Banner forgot who Peter Parker was, but the Hulk he would remember. And so like theoretically, if they were to meet, Hulk would be the only person who remembers Peter. And I think that's a very cool idea and concept, because I like this idea that like the personalities of Hulk and Banner, like they supersede the magical Doctor Strange spell, you know? I'm also just happy to see that Professor Hulk is like not a thing anymore. Like for sure, that's done. Little thing, but I really like this little shot of Peter dealing with pigeons. It reminds me of the PS4 game, which speaking of, Insomniac is bringing the brand new day suit into Spider-Man 2, which is really exciting. I'm just glad that that's going to coexist alongside the final swing suit. The brand new day suit looks outstanding. It looks like, and I mean this in the best possible way, it feels like just a guy wearing a Spider-Man costume, which is exactly how it should feel, instead of this CGI like smoothed over perfect like cartoon character, you know? And I think I still kind of prefer the one from No Way Home just a little bit, because I have like a weird attachment to that suit because I did that whole 90-minute Fabboy pre-write fan fiction thing, which I'm trying to underplay it. I'm deeply proud of, and like it's a huge part of like who I am, and I'm so glad I got to make that. And also I just kind of prefer like the belt on it. I prefer like the shininess of the blue, just like little things, because like, you know, I'm a comic book fan. The little things are really the most important thing here. I mentioned it a little bit before with Scorpion, but one thing that is very interesting about this trailer, this movie as a whole, and the way they're marketing it, is we still have no real clue about who the actual villain of this movie is. We know that there's a telepath running around doing something. And also interestingly that Peter is immune to it. I think that's kind of cool. This idea of like his spider sense makes it so he can't be affected. And this telepath is like 99% probably gonna be Sadie Sink's mysterious character, who we still know absolutely nothing about. We still haven't even seen her in the trailers aside from a couple mysterious hooded shots. But based on everything that like has been circulating, even as someone who doesn't follow leaks and rumors or anything like that, it is looking extremely likely that this character is going to be Jean Grey, if nothing else because it seems like Kevin Feige himself personally cast Sadie Sink as his character, you know? So it's like probably important, right? Which I still am not sure how I feel about that. It's definitely grown on me. I do like this idea of Spider-Man, the street level character who's very mutant adjacent and very X-Men adjacent. You know, he's a mutate as someone who's not born with mutant powers, but like I got them later in life. I think it's a very cool way to introduce the X-Men into the MCU. This whole Sadie Sink thing, I'm gonna be honest, I don't know, it feels like a weird little marketing gimmick, if that makes sense. This whole thing of like, who is she? Oh, you gotta watch the movie to find out. We're gonna put question marks next to her name because you gotta watch the movie to find out. Like, on one hand, I do think it's cool that they're not relying on, you know, her and the Stranger Things fame to bring people into the movie. I think that's neat. I don't know, it gives me the same kind of feeling that like Thunderbolts asterisk did. The whole like, oh, what's the asterisk? You gotta watch the movie to find out. Like, I understand the idea that like mystery and curiosity is what brings people to the movies, and it's cool that we're not spoiling everything all the time. But I don't know, there's something about this that just feels very like, I can't quite put my finger on it just yet. And weirdly, they kind of did the same thing actually with Zendaya in Homecoming, if I remember correctly. I remember that like we had no idea who she was. Like, she was this mysterious Michelle character, and then the movie like at the end very unsanctimoniously just said, hey, my friends call me MJ, and then we just kind of moved on from that. So this movie could be kind of trying to follow like a similar logic. I think it's just weird because like Jean Grey as a concept feels like such a wrench thrown into all this, you know, not necessarily in a bad way. Like I said, I think it could be very interesting to use Spider-Man to introduce the X-Men into this. I just, based on everything we've seen about this movie, like everything that I'm kind of piecing together from these trailers and like the ideas that I'm getting here, I cannot comprehend how Jean Grey could fit into any of this and make it cohesive, you know? It's just exciting. It's cool. It's very fun to like go into a movie completely blind like this. Sounds like I'm saying it as like a bad thing, but genuinely, like I really like that. I think it's neat. I just hope that because of all this buildup and all this hype around it, that it is as big of a deal as Jean Grey as she should be, you know, she's such a landmark important character for Marvel, and we don't get to the end of the movie and she's like, by the way, I'm Ralph Boner, you know? I do really like the whole like using different people to talk to Peter moment from the trailer. That's very fun. That's a very cool use of a telepath that I dig a lot. But on the topic of the villain, or you know, villain characters potentially, where the hell is Keith David? That was the biggest surprise of that first trailer for me, was, you know, hearing that silky sultry voice, baby. I was sort of expecting to see or at least hear a little bit more of him in the trailer. I still really hope that he's playing Miles Warren, the Jackal, and that he's sort of the surprise secret villain of the movie. That would line up really well with the whole idea of like mutation and sort of like DNA and stuff like that with whatever's going on with Peter. Or honestly, you know what if Sadie Sink's like Madeline Pryor or something instead, like something totally left field? Mr. Sinister's the main villain. That'd be crazy. That'd be really weird for a Spider-Man movie to introduce Mr. Sinister, but maybe. Stranger things have happened, am I right? That's a little Sadie Sink Stranger Things joke for you there. We see a lot more of Jon Bernthal's Punisher in this trailer. I'm gonna be blatantly honest with you all. I have not seen his special yet. Not because I don't want to. It looks very cool. I just forgot. I forgot when it came out and I feel like I've missed the boat. Surprisingly, he looks like a bigger part of this movie than I was expecting. I was originally expecting him to just be literally that one scene that we saw in the trailer and that's it. But no, it looks like he's genuinely gonna be involved in the story in a lot of ways. I wonder if, because we've also got Hulk in here, if they do go the direction of Peter becoming Man-Spider, maybe Man-Spider is the villain for sort of like the third act of the movie and it's about Punisher and Hulk having to kind of help take him down and help save Peter. You know, that could be a very cool spin on sort of the traditional superhero formula that we're so used to, you know? And speaking of things I have no clue about, we see a lot more of the Hand in this trailer. I don't know how the fuck they fit into this movie. They look awesome. It's very cool that they're in here, you know, especially compared to, you know, the Netflix version of the Hand. But they're pushed really heavily throughout the whole marketing campaign. It's very interesting. Quick spoilers for Daredevil Born Again Season 2. You know, skip to that time code if you don't want that. Because this whole big, like, showcase fight is taking place in a prison, I wonder if we might see Charlie Cox as Matt Murdock show up. Him being thrown in jail at the end of Season 2. Very cool development, by the way. I haven't talked about Born Again much. I wonder if that was partially an excuse to have him not show up in this movie, actually. I don't want to get my hopes up too much, you know, because like that's never gonna end well. Being like, oh well, why didn't this guy show up in my movie? But that final shot in the first trailer did look like somebody was missing. And speaking of someone missing, where's Aunt May? Oh wait, she's dead. Oh, my bad. It is fun that we hear her voice, and I think it might be like we get like a flashback that would be kind of neat, that sort of like fills out their relationship a bit more. I've always really liked Marissa Tomei as Aunt May because she's one of like my favorite actresses of all time. But I do think that their relationship was one of the like biggest lacking parts of the Home trilogy. Outside of Homecoming, I think Homecoming did them very well. There's like very, very, very good moments with her. And so it'd be nice to sort of like fill in some of the gaps and give a little bit more depth to her character that we didn't get in Far From Home and No Way Home. I'm personally hoping that we see the moment like right after Homecoming ends where she first finds out that Peter is Spider-Man, because that was such a landmark moment that they glossed right over in that trilogy. My buddy Brown Table actually did a very good animated scene sort of showing what he would want out of that, so definitely go check that out. But hey, watch out, Peter. If you're not careful, you might get buried alive in that thing. Now, I mentioned before that both trailers for this movie got leaked online beforehand. Now, I try not to talk about leaks too much on this channel because, like, you know, it just kind of it like kills the vibe. It's not very fun, you know? I do think that in some respect, they are kind of inevitable in this space. Some of the most formative moments for me with, like, fandom has been because of leaks. Stuff from, like, San Diego Comic-Con or the Deadpool test footage, or all the leaks about Andrew and Toby from No Way Home. It's like a landmark moment within the sort of Spider-Man community, you know? But they do harm creatives and creators, especially, like, on this scale. And scoopers and leakers are more and more aggressive than ever before, to the point where I'm like, it's almost like sad to see leaks now, you know? It's not fun anymore. We saw it really bad with Insomniac, who had a huge data breach, and a lot of the developers' personal information was released, which is why I was intentionally not talking about it and covering it. Also, again, because it's not fun. Like, what am I gonna do? Genuinely, what am I gonna do? I'm gonna be like, oh, the leak said this, so therefore this is what happens. That's not a fun YouTube video. Why would that be fun for anybody? Why would you watch that? The first trailer for Brand New Day had to be rushed, and the VFX had to be changed because of that first leak. And I think it's a bummer that leaks have become such a big part of like the subculture and fandom of like comic book movies, because I think we as fans should be listening to the creatives and the people involved with this movie, if nothing else because it feels like they're listening to us. Tom Holland has been on record for saying that he listened to podcasts and watched YouTube videos to see what people were looking for out of this next movie. Does that mean that he watched specifically my videos? I don't fucking know, probably not. Still, the fact that like that was even part of the process is very exciting. And normally I'm not even one to be like, oh, listen to the fans, but something about like the earnestness of that and like the genuine desire to be better, that's very exciting. That doesn't really, we don't really see that with modern blockbusters, you know? It doesn't feel like cheap fan service just being like, oh, put in the suit, put in a reference so the fans like it. It feels like genuinely like taking a look at the character and seeing why he's so special and applying that to your performance and to the movie. I have had my fair share of criticisms for MCU Spider-Man in the past, don't get me wrong. I'm not high top films or anything, but you know, I made a couple videos, and all of my critiques, they came from a place of wanting this version of the character to be better, to be the best version of Spider-Man that it possibly could be. And based on every single thing we've seen from this movie, from the costume to the action to the color grading to the Hulk and the Punisher and even Sadie Sink as potentially Jean Grey, it feels more and more likely that this could be that this could be the perfect Spider-Man movie. But what did you think about the new trailer for Spider-Man Brand New Day? Do you think that there's going to be like a curveball that nobody knows about yet? If you like this video, be sure to the like button and subscribe. Special thanks to my patrons and channel members. If you want to support the channel for just $1 a month, you can get your name in the credits and all of my videos early. And for $3 a month, there's a members only Discord server where we can talk about upcoming videos and my different ideas, and an exclusive video once a month. This has been Troy Boy 17 coming at you live. Be responsible, and I will see you around.